Hello and welcome to Tech Contracts for Salespeople. I'm David Tollen, your instructor. I want to start with a short story from my own experience. I'm a lawyer, among other things, as you may have seen if you looked at our materials. Years ago, I was getting ready for a contract negotiation representing a technology company, and I had a chat with the salesperson involved in the deal before we launched negotiation, and I reminded him that we've got some difficult terms in the standard contract, some stuff that technology customers generally don't like. So I said it might be a bumpy ride. The salesperson surprised me. He said that he had already shown the contract to the customer, in fact, early in the process, and he'd walked them through some of those more difficult terms. He didn't promise me that we were going to get through all of them and get everything we wanted, but he said, they get it. I've explained why we need that stuff, and they're looking at it and thinking about it. My reaction to that was not initially very positive. I thought, what is he doing that? That's my job. I'm supposed to show them the contract, walk them through the terms, explain anything. What if he got it wrong? But that is not what happened. In fact, when we got into the negotiations, they went unusually smoothly. The other side was not offended by some of the tougher terms we had. In fact, they had really thought about them. There was some back and forth and some push and pull, and we didn't get every single thing we wanted, but we got the contract done. We got it done in an unusually good time and without any of the tension that sometimes comes up over those more difficult terms. That was the first time I'd run into a salesperson who contributed so much to the process of negotiating legal terms. But it wasn't the last. In fact, as time went on, I started to run into a fair number of these salespeople who, as I call it, kind of could walk on water. They had really strong sales skills, and they combined that with an understanding of legal terms. In fact, it really was part of the sales process for them to explain legal terms to the customer, to help the customer work through difficult terms, sometimes to even act as a mediator between the lawyers and contract managers and the customer, because they understood the contract. So that's the goal of this course. It's to teach you to work in exactly that way and to get your deals done faster and easier as a result. And part of what that requires is a mindset shift, is to look at the contract as a deal closer. And really, it's helpful to think it through this way. You're negotiating the contract from the start. We don't often think of it that way, but when you are putting together your sale and working on, for instance, what the product is, what the price is, delivery stuff, delivery timelines, you're negotiating a contract. All that's going to go into the contract. And in fact, you are essentially selling a contract. So understanding the terms that you don't normally spend as much time on in the sales process, the quote unquote legal terms, adds to your toolkit for closing business. And actually, that phrase I use, legal terms, is in a way extremely unhelpful. There's really not such thing as commercial terms and legal terms in any contract. There are terms about business. It's all business issues. How much are we willing to risk? How much are we willing to spend if such and such happens? So look at your job as closing that deal, and that means closing all of the terms, getting agreement to everything that makes a part of the deal. That's really what I mean by contracting for sale mindset there on the slide. In fact, the famous phrase, always be closing, could as easily be called always be contracting, because you are always driving toward a signature on the contract. I want to say something too about the question of being proactive or reactive related to customer contract negotiations. The salesperson in the story I just gave you was extremely proactive. He talked through terms in advance with the customer. But you might find that most of the time, the value you get from the stuff you're going to learn in this course is reactive. It's when the customer starts to look at the terms and has a negative reaction that you jump into action and start talking through terms and managing the process and helping the customer understand. And again, sometimes maybe even negotiating between the lawyers and contract managers on your side and the customer, playing sort of a mediator role. So you can be both proactive and reactive. That said, there's a real value to being proactive at least some of the time when you're looking at particularly challenging terms. If you don't address tough terms, troubling terms in advance in the negotiation, and the customer doesn't see them until late in the process, say when they engage with the legal department, you might run into sticker shock. The customer might be offended that, why didn't you mention this before? These are terrible, these terms. And you can lose trust that way. Worse, of course, is you can have late in the game delays. And a huge part of what we're trying to do in this course is avoid late in the game contracting delays, which delay deals past the end of the quarter, past wherever you need them done, or prevent deals altogether. Finally, quick note about the downside of not really being on top of contract terms and not being, at least sometimes, proactive. The issue is you could find yourself spending a lot of time working on deals that can't actually be closed. Sometimes the two companies, the customer and your company, have incompatible needs on some issue that's not addressed until you get into the quote legal negotiation, like indemnity terms, like warranty terms. There's something there that blocks a deal. And if you don't look at problematic terms until the very end of the process, you might not detect that on time to avoid spending a ton of your time working on a deal that was never going to close. That said, hopefully that is the rare case, that what we're mostly talking about here is how to get your deals closed faster, not dealing with deals that can't close. Let's look now at the types of sales this course covers. The big three are there on the left: on-premise software sales, IT professional services sales, and cloud services sales. Now, you may work on deals that involve components of all three, but they're really three separate concepts, and so I want to make sure you understand them separately. On-premise software refers to software that the customer gets to make a copy of and run on its own computers. In theory, that's on the customer's premises. In reality, the computers might be in a data center, they might be virtual. The point is not that it's literally on the customer's premises or even that the customer literally owns the computers. It's that the customer's the one copying the software and putting it on those computers. Cloud services is also a software deal, but not to be confused with on-premise, because with cloud services, your company hosts the software. The customer doesn't get to make copies, they just get remote access. So that's software as a service, platform as a service, infrastructure as a service, as well as AI. AI is almost always provided as a cloud service where you're remote accessing the AI. Your customer is getting remote access rather than copies of any software. Then there's IT professional services, the third category. It's often confused for cloud services because of the unfortunate sharing of the word services, but the two are utterly different. Cloud services refers to providing software, software as a service, etc. The quote service is just the fact that you're running it. Professional services refers to help by people, programming, tech support, implementation, consulting, etc. The other three categories there on the screen are also addressed in this course. IT hardware, where you're actually selling just the equipment, is less central, but most of the stuff you're going to learn in this course does apply to IT hardware. Edge of industry offerings. That's a term I use for sales of something other than technology, but where the sale is so tech heavy that it might as well be a technology transaction, at least from a contracting point of view. Like data as a service. You're selling data, not technology, but you're selling it through a system that looks a lot like software as a service. Or think of things like Netflix and LinkedIn. They sell entertainment and marketing and networking services, not technology, but the delivery is so tech heavy that it's basically a tech deal. And again, what we're learning here covers it. And then finally, what we're going to talk about here addresses or is relevant to channel sales. By channel sale, I just mean where you're either striking a deal with your channel partner, with the distributor who's going to sell your technology, or you're getting involved with that distributor's transactions. Most of what we talk about here will be relevant to that, but it's much less of a focus than the other three. Let's turn now to where we're going in this course. The course is divided into 3 sections with multiple lessons in each. We're in the first one, section A, selling your contract and introduction. The rest of the course is roughly evenly divided between 2 sets of terms. Section B is the general terms, most of the stuff that you normally think of as software licensing terms, cloud services terms, IT professional services terms. And then part C, section C, is the key liability terms. So it's the terms about indemnity, limitation of liability, and warranty, which tend to be particularly contentious. We're in the first lesson of this section, of course, contracts as deal closers. The second lesson is Contracting 201. And we're going to talk there about the contracting process, particularly debunking some myths about both the role of contracts and the role of lawyers, contract managers, and other staff you might be working with on contracts. Finally, let's look at some resources available to you both during and after the course. That book on the screen is my book, the Tech Contracts Handbook, published by the American Bar Association. That is a pretty simple how-to guide on drafting and negotiating these contracts. It's for both lawyers and non-lawyers, and it's used by a lot of contract managers and salespeople. So hopefully you'll find that accessible, and you can buy it on Amazon or wherever else you buy books. The book has a lot of sample language in it, but that language is also available for free without buying the book at our website. That's techcontracts.com, and it's there on the screen. And this slide is available to you, so you'll have the links. So you can copy and paste any of the language we talk about, or you can make it available to your team, to any attorneys and contract managers you're working with if they want to get at that language. And the site has a lot of other free materials. That includes articles. It has full-length contracts that you can download and use. It has that article linked on the screen, Artificial Intelligence Contracts and Issue Spotter, which addresses some special issues surrounding AI and the terms you need for them. So that's all there for you at techcontracts.com, and I hope you find them helpful. If you found this video useful, please come check out Tech Contracts Academy. We provide training on drafting and negotiating contracts about artificial intelligence, cloud computing, and other forms of software. It's all for lawyers, contract managers, and any business people involved with contracts. So please come check out our programs live and on demand at techcontracts.com.